Good morning. Today we are looking at the following essential questions as we begin close reading a poem, a literary piece of the text. We're going to look at number 4, what is literary text really about? And number 5, how does interaction with text provoke thinking and response? For this particular poem, we're going to close read it for what the text says, how the text says it, and why the text matters. For what the text says, as you read the poem dump the first time, please read through to create a summary of each stanza of the text. This is a longer poem, so make sure you represent each stanza in your summary. As we read for what the text says, we're going to be focusing on learning target number 5 to create an objective summary of the text. Now, remember, an objective summary of the text is slightly different for fiction. Poems are a little bit of an exception, but if this is a literary piece that has a conflict and a full plot, you'd make sure that you center your summary around the entire plot elements, focusing on the conflict. For poems, again, they are slightly different. Sometimes they don't have a plot, and sometimes they're to convey strong emotion. So make sure the strong emotion that you are, or that the poet is expressing in each stanza is represented, but do so without any personal opinions. Only include the information found in the poem itself in your own words. And also don't make quotes. It should be fully in your own words when you write that summary. In phase 2, we're reading for how the text says it. As we reread the poem dump for how the text says it, we are going to focus in on the end rhyme. What is the impact of the end rhyme of the poem? And cite text evidence to support your response. When we focus on end rhyme, we are focusing on learning target number 12, which states to analyze the impact of rhymes and other repetitions of sound, such as alliteration, on the specific verse or stanza of a poem or a section of a story or drama. That means to look closely at the effect of rhymes and other repetitions of sound, like alliteration, and what it does to the poem in this case. Now, for this particular question, we are focusing on the rhyme. This has an end rhyme. So you're going to see an end rhyme scheme throughout this poem. We're not looking at alliteration, but just to review, alliteration is the repetition of that consonant sound found at the beginning of the words. But instead of looking at alliteration for this specific target, we're going to look at the end rhyme. So as you read through the piece, focus on that end rhyme and think of its impact. So notice in this first line, we have pour rhyming with store. So that's A, B, A, and look, find rhymes with mine, B. So you have an end rhyme and an A, B rhyme scheme. So what is the impact or the effect of having that end rhyme used throughout the poem? As you answer this phase, not only do you need to find a piece of evidence to help support yourself, you also want to begin with the following statement. The end rhyme does what? Does it hint at something, emphasize something, explain something, or highlight something about the text? Finish that sentence off and then follow that with your cited evidence, and then spend your time at the end of your response connecting your cited evidence to that opening statement that you make as your claim. For phase 3, we're going to read for why the text matters. As we reread this text the final time, we're going to be reading for learning target number 6, the interaction between two different parts of the text, to analyze how particular elements of the story or poem interact, to look closely at how different parts or different literary skills can affect each other in a text. And in this case, we're going to look at how the setting mentioned by the speaker in this poem impacts the mood of the piece. Let's make sure we're keeping in mind, remember, the setting is the time and place of this poem and the details that represent the time and place of the poem. And when we talk about mood, that's the feeling that the poem gives the reader. So the reader gains a feel for this poem based on the words used by the setting in this case. So we want to think about how the words to describe the setting actually impact the feeling the reader of the poem gets. Remember, mood is going to be a specific word, sort of like when you pick a specific adjective for tone, but mood can only be a positive mood or a negative mood. So really think of that specific word that you would use to describe the mood of this piece as you answer this poem about how, or this question about how the setting impacts the mood. And again, you will be citing text evidence to support your response. In phase 2 and 3, as we cite text evidence, we're looking at learning target number 1. Obviously, our evidence should be directly quoted with quotation marks around it from the poem. And we are looking at learning target number 2 to make a claim. Our initial answer to these questions are our claim, are our opinion statement that we are proving and supporting with the text evidence from the passage. So go ahead and get started on today's close read of the poem Dump. Your quiz on this and a poem we're going to be discussing tomorrow will be on Thursday.